Well, this vegetable that we're going to harvest today is Swiss chard. Now, if you look at it here, it looks like a cool season crop, and actually Swiss chard is a beet. It's Beta vulgaris, and it's in the cycla group. But instead of growing Swiss chard for a bulb like you would for a beet, this is grown for its stem and also the large leafy greens at the top. Now, you might think, okay, this is a cool season crop, so it needs to be harvested and it's not going to grow very well in the summer. But actually, Swiss chard is very heat tolerant and it will do well in your garden spring, summer, on into the fall, and will actually resist a bit of frost. So this is a great plant for seasonal greens in your garden. Now, to harvest Swiss chard, you don't have to harvest the whole thing, but what you can do is just harvest the outer leaves that are ready. Now, wait until the leaves are large, but not too large, and then just cut at the base of the stem, and you have this nice, lovely white stem and the green leaf. Now you can go along and harvest just what you need to cook with, and then let the rest of it grow, and then come out and harvest again. Now you want to use this soon after you harvest it because it doesn't store very well. Now this variety with the nice green leaves that I'm harvesting is called Monstruoso. Now there's a lighter color back here that's called Dorat, and you might recall that last year we had one that had a beautiful red stem, and that is Rhubarb Swiss chard. Now, in addition to growing them for greens, you can actually grow them as a nice landscape plant because of this nice stem and the nice green leaves. But they're also great to cook with, and Barb Brown is going to show us how to cook with Swiss chard.
Chard is another one of the really nice vegetables that have been growing in the garden this year, and it's so nice because you actually get two vegetables, or you can get two meals out of one vegetable. It's very versatile, but because the stems are so much more dense, you actually need to work with the stems differently than you do with the leaves. So when you bring it in, you need to wash the whole thing the way you do other greens, which means a lot of water, swishing them around in the water, and then lifting them out rather than pulling the plug and let the water drain around them, because that just lets the dirt and other sediment and other things you've washed off, the bugs, settle right back onto the leaves. So you may need several rinses of water to get it clean. Now once you get it clean, because we do need to separate things, the stem, which is like celery and can actually be used like celery in many dishes, and you can even eat it raw like you would celery. You want to separate that from the leaves, which is going to respond to cooking the way spinach does, in that you need very little water, very little time in order to cook it, and the stem requires more time. So in order to store it well, we're going to separate the two. Now if it's got a thick midrib or it's tough, then you just use a paring knife to cut that out. But if, on the other hand, it's fairly tender yet, what you could do is fold the leaf in half and then just give an upward pull, and if it's young enough and tender enough, that will pull all the ribs out at one time, and you'll have all the separation done for you. Store them separately in plastic bags in the refrigerator, even if you're going to use them both in the same dish, because you're going to want to cook them differently or add them at different times. The dish we're preparing today is a Swiss chard with penny pasta, and to prepare this one I have 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil or olive oil that will add to the electric skillet here, and about 1/8 teaspoon of dried red pepper flakes, and for that you can use your own taste. If you want more or less, that's fine. And in addition to that, I'm going to add a little bit of garlic, well actually a fair amount of garlic. There's 3 cloves of garlic that I've sliced fairly thin. These you would cook until the garlic begins to get soft, but you don't want it to brown. And the skillet isn't quite as hot as I would like, so we'll let that go ahead and work. But I'm going to go ahead and add the next ingredient. Here we have the stems, and you'll notice that because this is basically a stir-fried, or it involves a stir-fry, I want them to cook fairly quickly. So that I've sliced them at a diagonal, and I've sliced them about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch thick. And I'll go ahead and add that to this. Now you don't want them to dry out too much, even though this is a fairly high water content. And you'll notice that I did slice these a little, probably about an hour ago, and they've started to turn a little bit brown. So you want to slice them as close to the time when you need them as you can. That maximizes nutrient retention and also makes them look a little bit better. If you have a little bit of the green leaves in here, that's okay. You want to do as much separation as possible, but it's not necessary that you get overly excited to get them accurate. Now at this point, we're going to also add, I'm going to let this brown a little bit more, but we'd add 1/4 of a cup of water to this, and then put the lid on it and let it simmer down for 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how thin they're sliced and how tender they are, so that you get a fair amount of the cooking done on the stems, because they're the tough part. And then we'll come back and add the leaves to that. Once you've let that cook for about 5 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes and you know that it's tender, then you can go ahead with the next step, and that's to add the leaves to this. Now you notice that we still have a fair amount of liquid in here. You have another option of adding a little bit more water to it, but the leaves already have some moisture, and just like spinach, they're not going to need a whole lot. So add the water as needed, not simply because it's called for in the recipe. Now chard leaves are very tender. It can be substituted in spinach recipes, and they're also, like spinach, fairly high in nutrients, but very low in calories. 2 to 3 cups of raw chard leaves will only have about 19 calories, and when you cook them down, you get 1 cup of cooked chard still only has 26 calories, until you start adding some of the other things that we add to make it have a little bit more flavor, such as the vegetable oil that we've added here. I'm going to stir these two together, and then once again, according to the recipe, we would put the lid on it and let this simmer for about 5 minutes, and that would let the leaves limp down or wilt down. And we would have something that would be very, very nice. Now I can see that we're going to add a little bit more water to it because some of the water's been taken up here. So I'm going to add the 4th cup as we go. Now this would normally cook for about 5 minutes with the lid on to make sure that everything is well wilted. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and add the next ingredient, which is a cup of drained diced tomatoes, or if it's tomato season, go ahead and add chopped fresh tomatoes. And this again, you put the lid back on and let that warm through. The tomatoes are not going to, particularly if you're using canned ones, cooking them again is not going to be a problem. If they're fresh tomatoes, you want to cook the time as short as possible to maximize the nutrients. We also want to cook this as short a time as possible because we want to retain as much color as we can. Now the last step on this, after it is cooked for another 5 minutes or 3 minutes after you've added the tomatoes, is to stir it together with penny pasta. If you don't have penny pasta, which looks something like this, a very thin or small tube, you can use macaroni. It works just as well. And then it's simply a matter of tossing the two together, and you'll have dinner. I'm going to stir in some Parmesan cheese along with this, and maybe a little bit more of the chard mixture. Normally we'd use it all. And once you get those tossed, maybe a fresh salad and some fruit for dessert and some more bread, and pass the Parmesan cheese, and you're ready to eat.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.